Good afternoon and welcome to a Oak Harbor City Council workshop. Today is May 23rd. It is 2 p.m. and we are scheduled to go until 4:30 this afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time, and before we turn it over to our first delivery, let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. I'm Bob Severns, Mayor, and Joel
Cervedia, City Council.
Bill Larson, City Council.
Beth Munns, Mayor Pro Tem.
Patricia Stoll, Finance Director.
Joe Stowell, City Engineer.
Christine Walden with the HKP Architects.
Rick Allenberg, City Council.
Thank you. And I think our first 205 delivery today is from Finance. We are talking about utility office remodel.
Yes. So we're currently printing copies at this size for you all, but I'll go ahead and start passing mine around. They're technical difficult. Oh, here they come. Okay.
Right on cue.
So this is office remodel for utilities has been a topic for quite a while, way prior to me. And so during our last budget cycle, we budgeted 21,200 based on conceptual idea done by our building official at the time, Brian. There was no real plan. We just wanted to get kind of a ballpark. So Alex Warner took over when Brian left. He's out sick today, otherwise he'd be here. Joe's pitch hitting.
I'm here for more support.
And so he immediately started talking to an architect. We went with HKP Architect and had them come up. They took a look at our traffic flow. They looked at some of our safety issues and came up with this design that was in your packet, but this is a lot easier to look at the bigger picture. And based on that, came up with an estimated cost. And I'm going to let Christine Baldwin go through that with you all, but I just want to explain that this whole presentation today is to discuss the idea, and if you are okay with the difference in cost, us coming back at the next meeting with permission to go to bid. Okay. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine so she can do the technical explanation for us.
Thank you, Patricia.
Yep.
So as Patricia noted, we were contracted to work with Alex and Patricia on developing a renovation plan for the utility billing office. It started out with us looking at how the space functioned currently and some of the deficiencies and how the staff were able to function. What we noted and what they noted as well was it was primarily some challenges in terms of visibility and access for the 3 cashiers to interact with people coming in and paying their bills in terms of the casework and being able to accept payment and not have to lean over spaces and make it a little bit more efficient as well. So we first met with Patricia and to kind of walk through what some of the goals were for the space, and that was primarily looking at rearranging the existing casework so that all 3 cashiers can comfortably be up at the main desk there to serve, as well as take down some of the existing walls to provide better visibility of the space while also addressing concerns for security after hours as well. So we worked through several different design options, presenting different options and layouts and how the space could better serve the needs of both the staff and the customers as well. And what Patricia and the staff and Alex came to the conclusion was that the solution presented in your packet was the best option in terms of efficiency and meeting the needs of the staff and the customers as well. So what it shows is that there are now 3 cashiers' desks, and I should say it's on 1, 2, 3, 4, page 5. It represents or shows 3 cashiers' desks, which are noted as service counter 1, 2, and 3, with one of them being ADA compliant, as well as some additional counter space along the back for storage. And what you'll notice too is that some of the walls in the existing lobby out here have been removed to provide better visibility and release kind of the pinch point that is currently existing at that door entrance to the office. So there's more of a flow around to get to those service counters. So it's laid out with kind of an entrance area and then an exiting area for people that come in to make payments, so it's more efficient for everybody. One item too that's noted in these drawings and also represented in some of the following pages is a security grill, such that the office can be closed off after hours so that there's no security concerns. There's also some visuals that are included at the end to show what that space would end up looking like with this proposed remodel and removing some of the walls, maintaining a drinking fountain, and again providing that option for the security grill so that the space can remain secure after hours. Then to kind of walk through the estimate that we came up with, if that's okay. The estimate that we came up with as an office, looking at both some references we use, such as an RS Means book that kind of lays out what typical costs are, as well as looking at some of our current projects and the cost for items. Everything that's included in this scope of work, except for some of the door
Can we get a
card.
copy of that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was in your packet that was on the workshop agenda, but
I have a couple extra copies here, which I'd be happy to pass out.
I have electronic
Oh, you do? Okay.
copy
Okay. Does everybody have a copy? Thank you. So to start with the general requirements, this is part of every project, and it includes the performance bond for the contractor. Demolition includes removing the existing casework as well as the existing walls, door, and relight. Both of those are based off lump sums. Casework, again, we've also referenced RS Means as well as current projects right now, and have applied a value of $50 per linear foot. Excuse me, $300 for 50 linear feet for the $15,000 total. There will have to be some minor ceiling retrofit to accommodate the security grill and its track overhead, and that we're addressing as a lump sum. The existing door into the hallway as well will be shifted back, shifted west from its current location. We've applied a lump sum for that because there will have to be some minor floor patching where it is. Again, some more wall patching, just where the existing walls are being removed. We've also accounted for a tack board so that staff can tack and not damage the drywall. The security grill, $5,000 cost is both the material, the prep, and the install, and that number was after we reached out to suppliers so we could get a more accurate number. There will be a little bit of relocation of some existing lights and power and data, so we applied a lump sum for that, $2,000. And lastly, the mechanical, the existing drinking fountain will be relocated, so there will be some minor plumbing, some rerouting of the plumbing work for that. We do always, for projects, apply a contingency as well, which is a percentage of 5% of the overall project to account for anything, since we're not at the 100% construction document level. So that's very typical for projects. As well as the general contractor overhead and profit of 8% as well. And I should note that that really is dependent upon the market and the current bid climate. So that number, it's totally dependent on how a contractor bids it and whether they bid it at assume a 10% profit or 12%. So that is a flexible number, but we've put it in 8% for right now. One item I should note on the sales tax is that we have sales tax of 8.5%, but it's my understanding it's actually 8.7%. So that difference is an additional about $63. And lastly, the items at the bottom are not included as part of this contract and are to be handled in-house by Patricia and Alex as well, and that would be the door hardware, access control, security, as well as some minor painting and floor patching.
And I can go ahead and add to that. On the security, we're looking at some point putting in a card lock system so that when that door is in place, it'll have the ability to be unlocked by the front desk staff, but it'll also allow staff and employees to have a ability to either key in a code or slide a code. That is part of a bigger security issue that I think we need to look at outside of the remodel. In my opinion, that's why it's not included in that. The painting, we have paint already in place from when they painted the city hall, so we won't have to purchase paint. We'll just, that'll be something Tom will probably do from Public Works. And then the floor patching, tile and carpeting, that's something, again, we have tile patches, carpet tile patches that could go there, but that's something we didn't want to have another firm look at if we have stuff that we can actually do it. So I came up with and this is in your packet, I didn't hand this out. I came up with an estimated owner performed cost of about $2,500. That was based on Rich and Tom weighing in on what they think the floor patching and the painting would be. So that's part of that total that we came up with. So do you have more that you want to say, Christina? You want me to?
I think that's it, but I'd be happy
Okay,
to fill in.
so I want to go into this document showing what we budgeted versus what we came to and how I proposed that we could actually cover it. So as I said, the budget was $21,200. Of that, finance was budgeted to pay $4,000. Utilities were budgeted to pay $17,200. We took the project and divided it by 5 and split the 4 utilities equally and then finance. So every one of the changes, the design, permitting, bid, and construction, contract with HKP or HPK? HKP. Okay, good. HKP Architects was $72.50. Her estimate that she currently has, as she said, it has not been bid yet. This is her best guess. So what our next action will be, if you guys are okay with it, is to come back and ask to go to bid so that we can get true final numbers. And then the $2,500 brings us up to $43,893, which is an overage of $22,693. If you split that overage, $42.82 would come out of general fund, and the other $46.03 would come out of the 4 different departments in utilities.
Patricia,
Yes.
the numbers you just read didn't quite jive with what we're looking at. Can you say those last?
This doesn't jive?
Give me the final total.
Final total was $43,893.
Yeah, we're off by,
I got 42.
You have 42,566.
figure it was close, but there was.
Dang it, I wonder what that was. I wonder, does that not include the $2,500? Could I see what you guys are looking at? Thank you. Yep, that one doesn't include the $2,500. So the upload was missing that $2,500 for owner performed painting and flooring. So the actual total should be the $43,893. So a difference of $400, $300 to the utilities and $200 to the general fund. So, and that concludes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I know a concern why we even got into this was security. I don't remember the exact incidents, but we've had some spun up people that didn't quite leap over the counter, but were angry enough, and our employees felt threatened. And so will this security measure of how this design be able to protect them is what I'm wondering.
So the security grill would be installed, I should say, on the, or it would be operable by closing it from the side that the customers would be on. So I think right now the intent due to budget was that it would be manually operated, where somebody would close it from the outside when the workday is over. But I should say that the casework, all the casework is up much higher right now,
Okay.
with exception of the ADA workstation, so that it does certainly provide a little bit more separation between the customer and
And
the
there's
cashiers.
a lip too, correct?
There is, correct.
And currently, one of our cashiers doesn't have a lip. They're right up in her business, so.
You know, they do have a panic button that they can hit, and we're right across the street from the police station. I think there was a decision made early on to not put any kind of protective glass or anything, because that's very unfriendly and costly as well. So,
But it's high, like, if you go to a bank, those tellers are up higher, so it would be pretty difficult to, you'd have to really be launching, and by then you could have help. It's just, I know at times it gets really crowded in there because it's a small space, and then someone gets unhappy, and then it just kind of feeds. And then other people go, well, I don't like that either. And so anyway, I just know it hasn't been often, but you know, one time is enough to
part of what
really
helps too is opening that area up.
Mhm.
Right now, you have the one door to go in and out
Right.
of. So if somebody is upset, there'll be more space to move around, which will be helpful. But you know, it is the utility counter. We're open to the public, so you always run that risk of somebody getting overly upset. I don't know that it's ever been truly life or death dangerous. It's just people that are upset. So, and we have ways of dealing with upset people, and
Yeah.
our staff has good training.
No, it looks good, and they're not one or kind of two here and one here, and you're not enclosed because it's more open and the water fountain's moving. So no, I think it looks like a good. I just had to ask because that kind of spurred why they wanted to redo it to start with. There were other reasons once you get into it, but I just wanted to be sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Other council questions? Yes, Councilor Davies.
Thank you. Is the security grate floor to ceiling?
Correct, yes. It is.
I guess it would have to be to close off the entrance. It's not, because sometimes in the banks or whatever, it'll actually attach to the counter, but in this case, it's got to clear that big open space, so it's got to
Right,
go.
so there will be an overhead track, and then at both, when it's closed all the way, there will be a way for it to bolt into the ground and bolt up as well, so it will be secure, but yes, floor to ceiling.
Yes, Councilor Larson.
Patricia, just to go back, I know we've been talking about security and grates, but to go back to the bottom line, where I'm looking at on page 3 here, it had a total of $42,566, and you said, and there's going to be another $2,500, so that would bring our total not into the 43s, but $45,066.
You know, one thing to keep in mind when we're getting into the detail on the number is that the construction is just an estimate at this point anyway. Until we get bids, it's just our best guess.
Let me just re-add it real quick, just because I want it to know.
Okay. While she's doing that, the way we intend to procure this is to use a small works roster to kind of streamline things. It's a small enough dollar amount that we can use that to our advantage as opposed to a typical full-on bid set like we normally do, which is kind of overkill for something this small.
43,893 is what I'm adding, so 7,250, 34. Oh, the 35,066.
Yeah, and then we have now for the architect on this one, it's 7,500. So
Yeah. So the one that was attached is the beginning document before we refined it. Our initial amount before we reused the door and we reused the fountain was the 35. So we looked at ways to save. I don't know how that got attached. That was on me, my mistake. Sorry.
Okay.
I will send you all out an updated budget page.
Thanks.
So, and it is 43,893.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you very much for pinch hitting there, Joe.
So we do plan to bring it back to council to ask if we can go to bid. So I just wanted to make sure that,
Is that intended to be like on the consent agenda or something? Is that what we're doing?
would it be, yeah, I think we're gonna just plan on putting it on the consent agenda, and if you guys wanna pull it off, if you have any further questions, that'd be great.
I think if you send out that
I
revised
will,
sheet,
for sure.
probably be sufficient.
Joe.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll move on to the second item, development services. We have, looks like 3 items under development services. So I see our director Steve Powers coming up, and Senior Planner Kamak here to join us. So item number A is Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan Update and 6-year Implementation Plan. So are you going to take that one on, Kak?
This thing's on. All right. I do have a presentation with some bullet lists to follow along. So this is continuing on our update to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. It's part of our comprehensive plan update, and we're continuing to work on that. So our park plan, as I mentioned before, is a compilation of all the previous plans, and their goals have come together. And so it's a document that actually has history, wasn't just created with every update. And there are many goals and policies within that plan. And for a city like ours, we do need those long-range goals to keep our eye on the horizon as we move forward. But within this plan, we do break it into bite-sized chunks, and that's the 6-year plan. So here, I'd like to start talking about, well, what do we want to accomplish in our park plan over the next 6 years? And so I've been talking to the park board, and I talked to the planning commission. So here I am at the workshop talking to the city council. Eventually, I'll hopefully gather all the ideas, and put it together in the plan and bring it forward. So to start off, we have some ideas. Again, we've discussed this with the park board and the planning commission. We've got some input from them. And we'll start off with what we think we can accomplish. This is a starting list. This is not a final list. So this is open for discussion, additions, deletions, all that kind of good stuff. So, as over the next 6 years, of course, time and resource is going to play a big part in what we can accomplish. And we all know that we have the wastewater treatment plant that's being built, and it's in one of the biggest parks for the community. And there's a lot of improvements that are being done on that park. And so that does take up a lot of resources. It takes up staff time, it takes up planning for the projects, implementation, and so on and so forth. So we expect that the improvements to the Windjammer Park will take up about 2 to 3 years worth of staff resources and focus on. And this includes replacing existing structures. There are some sports courts that are proposed, plaza, parking improvements, splash park, and the different pathways. And as you all know, we have funding for some and we don't have funding for others. So just trying to find dollars to do this takes resources, and then eventually to implementation. So we see this taking up a significant portion of our next 6 years in terms of implementation. However, Windjammer Park is not the only park in the city. We do have several other parks, and they could use attention as well, or some type of work that keeps things moving forward on other fronts. And so we have some other suggestions for you to look at and consider. And that is some land acquisition. So, we have level of service in our current plan. It's based on recreational facilities as well as spatial. We have nice neighborhood parks in our community, and they're mostly within half-mile of of residents living around them. Our community parks are few and far between. They're Fort Nugent Volunteer Park and Windjammer Park are our community parks. And they have ball fields and recreational facilities. However, we know, and these are all based on, we have some population based, for every 6,000 of population, you should have one soccer field or one football field. So there's some national standards we follow and try to keep up with. So land acquisition, so there's been talk about the ball fields at Windjammer Park and about relocating them. And there's also the potential of the school district using the 20-acre parcel that we're currently under lease with them for, and that's where all the soccer field is, and there's a baseball diamond as well there. And they may be wanting to use that land as well. So those facilities need to be relocated somewhere. So we need land to accommodate just those, and that's just to keep our current level of service. So this is not an expansion of our facilities, that's just to keep our current facilities. So it is important that we start looking at that just to keep our level of service and provide that service to the community. So we need to keep eyes on that, and as the council knows, we do have some leads on some park land that we're following up by Gun Club Road. Council approved or authorized staff to apply for a grant to try and seek funds to do that. So there's some work that's already being done, but that will take some time and effort, and we got to keep our eyes on things like that as we move forward. Other than that, we still do need land to expand our facilities as the city grows, just to meet our level of service. So land acquisition should be in our radar over the next 6 years, and every time we have an opportunity, we should look at exploring that option. So that's part of that made the list. We need to keep investing in our existing parks. Some of the things that are picking up in terms of sports, pickleball. I've never played pickleball, but I hear it's pretty popular, and there's a lot of demand for that. Some of the existing tennis courts by the farmers market have been converted to pickleball courts, and they and it's gaining popularity, and a lot of people want to play it. So we should try and find a way to try and meet that demand. So we'll look for opportunities there. At the park board, we had requests for expanding dog park or adding additional dog park, and so this seems to again be something that's popular and in demand. And so it's good for us to keep an eye out for opportunities there. And of course, one of the things that we hear, we did a couple surveys over the past 6-7 years. One to do the 2009 plan, and we did a survey to do this update. We heard about playground equipment and the need to replace them. And so those are things that we should look for opportunities to do. So we've added those things as well in the 6-year plan. Another thing that's really important to the citizens and to the community are trail systems within the community. We don't have much trail system in Oak Harbor. We have the waterfront trail, and that's it. But the park plan calls as a big vision for having trails all around Oak Harbor, and we should continue to improve that. But the waterfront trail is one of the big assets of the city. It's in our vision to keep improving that, and it's good for the community economically and tourist-wise to keep improving on that asset. So we'll continue to work on improving the waterfront trail. We already have a couple projects that are along that trail. The Pasek Street Outlook is one of them, or the Lookout, sorry. The VFW Park, that we still have work to do on that, so we'll continue to work on that. That'll take up some time. And also to improve the linkage between the marina and downtown will be a great help as well, and so we'll look for opportunities to do that in the next 6 years. Some of the other things that we can keep in our radar, 7th Avenue wetlands design. This was in the last round of 6-year plans that we didn't really get an opportunity. And when I say opportunity, it's just got to be a timing of funding and resources or some community drive for many things to come together. 7th Avenue wetlands is one of those areas that's in the city that could maybe have some trail system and provide that kind of a natural environment where people would like to go and walk in the evenings, on the mornings. But it does take a lot of resources because it's a wetland, and the way you build trails close to wetlands or wetland buffers has all kinds of rules that usually leads to increased cost. But nonetheless, this is an area of town that has a lot of housing around it, and potential for housing as well. We know 7th Avenue we're trying to get that improved, and we know that there's lack of sidewalks along there. We've seen evidence of people walking back and forth, ADA wheelchair. So we know that that's a busy area. And so if we accommodate some kind of a trail system there, I think it'll be beneficial for the community. So good to have that on our list of things to look out for. While we were doing this update, we met with some interest groups, and the Whidbey Island Bicycle rep was there and was talking about all the events that they have and how popular biking is getting. We also heard in our surveys that biking is getting popular. So to find a location for a bike park, there are bike parks in other communities I've seen, and they seem to be very popular, and so there seems to be some demand for that here as well. And if we have a park or some opportunity to do that, I think Hank is on the lookout on trying to identify some land that could lend itself. If you find a piece of land and have the bicycle club help out, they'll provide a lot of hours and time to try and develop a park like that. So it's a good community involvement type project and could help push some things along as well. So we have that also added to the 6-year plan. And this also came from discussions with the park board and the planning commission, is some sort of trail pedestrian connection to Fort Nugent Park. And this is, west of Fort Nugent Park. The city has started to grow that direction. There's a lot of residences there, but there's no good connection to the park there. And again, there's evidence along that Fort Nugent Park of people walking along the side of the road where there's no sidewalk. And just for safety reason and as a connection to our parks, we can investigate if there's grant money out there. So some of these projects have been placed in there with the idea that we can find a grant source or some to fund these projects, and to have it in the plan is really helpful because that shows intent of wanting to do that, and so that's also included in the plan. So that's kind of the gist of the 6-year projects that we've been talking to. Like I said, Windjammer Park is going to take a lot of the time, but we do need to keep our eye on some of the other projects and move things along. So that's it from my side on the 6-year projects to accomplish. So I'll open it up for thoughts, comments, discussions, and other ideas.
Councilor Larson.
Hey, Mayor. So you were talking, Cac, about looking at national standards and numbers as far as fields and things like that. And I was just curious, do we have any data, or could we acquire it on the number of covered pavilions? In particular, like in Fort Nugent, when you go there on a weekend, those things are booked that way in advance. There's only a couple of them. And I was wondering, are we below the standard? Is that about right? And if we have fewer than what's recommended, moving forward with something along those lines?
I don't think there are national standards for structures like that, but that was one of the things that came up in the survey. I think it was the top 3. The covered shelters was one of the big things that came in the survey as people wanting more of those facilities. But there is no standard that I know of for such facilities. They have recreational facilities that's more comes from more of an architectural data standpoint, but not for structures. But we know that there is a demand in our community for that because they are reservable, and the moment they become reservable, I know they get booked up.
Yeah.
So Hank is always looking for an opportunity. I think Windjammer Park has a few structures that could be reservable as well. So hopefully that'll relieve some of Fort Nugent demand after it gets done. But we should definitely look for opportunities in other parks as well to do that.
Thanks.
Councilor Radius.
Thank you. I'm kind of intrigued by the bike trail park thing. Having went through the woods the other day off Goldie Road with Chief Tresker, there's obviously some issues there with the encampments and whatnot. And there's a set of power lines that run through there. I don't know if that's city and how close that is to, I'm trying to look on a map, to what we already were looking at. You referenced the Gun Club Road or Rifle Road properties. And then just to the south of that, if you do the 7th Avenue wetlands, I think there's a pretty interesting
Absolutely. So I don't know if you have the current park plan with you, but there is a drawing. Well, they have them on maybe. Yeah. They have the tablets, easy access to that, you know. But the existing park plan has a schematic kind of visionary view of how to connect trails throughout the city. And I'll kind of describe briefly how that works, and you'll probably get the picture in your mind. So, you know, we have the waterfront trail, and from there going west, go up Scenic Heights. From Scenic Heights, you go up through that one development to connect to Eagle Vista. So with Eagle Vista development, we've identified a multi-use trail that will go along Eagle Vista, which will be a collector street. And it then goes out into what is now the county, and maybe eventually will be the city, but it kind of goes into wetland area, and then Fort Nugent is right there. So hopefully in the development of those areas, you'll get some trails there, and then you cross over into the development just west of the golf course, and then you connect up to the Fakima Farm property, and then you connect up to the Swantown Lake, maybe Joseph Whitby State Park, and then you come back in through Crosby. There's some wetlands there. Go up to Gun Club, cut across 16th, all the way to Regatta, and yes, kind of like a necklace format for the 7th Avenue to connect up with that, and then you connect up to Regatta, and then Regatta back down to the waterfront. So that's kind of in the plan as a long-term, as property develops, as opportunity. So that's already in the park plan. And wherever we have streets that are adjacent to that, we'll probably try and accommodate a multi-use trail to that. Or if there's a development, we'll have it through there. Or if it's wetlands, then got to find resources and money to build those trails.
Anyone else?
All right.
Okay,
Very
seeing
good.
none,
So
thank you.
we'll add that to the draft document as it comes forward.
Great, thanks, Kat. We'll go to the next item, which is B, amending Master Fee Schedule A, Development Services, Building Division, State Building Code Council surcharges.
We have Scott King, our building official, will brief the council on these items.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, what you have before you here is an amending document for the master fee schedule concerning the State Building Code Council surcharges. So I received a letter from the State Building Code Council, and they are amending the charges. And basically what they've done is we've always had a surcharge of $4.50 that's added to a building permit. Residential and commercial building permits were all treated the same with a $4.50 charge. So now they've raised that $2 and it's $6.50, but they've separated commercial from residential. So now they're adding a $25 charge to commercial building permits. We don't have a choice. It's mandated. We have to adopt it. But in short, that's what it is.
Yes, Councilor Surveillance.
Do you know what that fee is being used for if we get asked on the street?
I don't.
Okay. Could you
But I'll find out.
Email us, just send out an email, because we're gonna, at some point, somebody will inquire.
We can certainly do that.
Absolutely.
What we'll do is, we'll do our best to put that information in the agenda bill. Because I think we're trying to put this onto the June 5th agenda, because there were some other master fee schedule updates that we're already tracking to your June 5th agenda. So if we get an answer to that, we'll just drop it into the agenda bill and it'll be there for you.
I'll find that information out.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question, you may not have it off the top of your head, but I'd like to know by our next meeting is, do we know how many building permits we issued in 2017 for residential and commercial?
We have that information. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, but yeah, we track it as you might expect.
And the reason I asked that question is, it's a $2 additional fee for each residential, and we're looking at $20.50 additional for the building permits. And I'm looking to see what that would save people who are, as far as if we absorb that, because we're trying to be developer friendly as far as we want people to build residential units in our city. We want people to build commercial buildings in our city. So looking at what we were looking at last year as far as number of permits, what the difference would be and what that we would pick up as far as the city or charge them if we were to adopt this resolution.
So what the total number of permits were in each category
Yes.
is what you're looking for.
I know that we had well in excess of 1,000, but I'll break it down so we can see. Certainly, there's not near as many commercial permits as there are residential permits, but a $25 fee increase from nothing is, a pretty good increase. So
And this applies to all building permits, not necessarily just permits for new structures.
that's correct, but it does not apply to plumbing permits, mechanical permits, those kinds of things. We're talking building permits themselves.
So I asked that question because that might make a difference to the council's conversation about it. New units versus a building permit to remodel the inside of an existing home or to remodel the inside of an existing office. You might think about those differently than you do permits for new construction.
Absolutely.
Good question. Okay, yes, Mayor Pope.
Thank you. I guess this would be a question for Nikki. We can't have the appearance of gifting, or just a question for later, but on the permits, there are times that we have backed our own personal permits, but if this is state mandate, we can't gift that to someone either.
I think
I
that's an
wouldn't
interesting
think.
question
Yeah.
for the city attorney
Eventually,
to help
yes.
us with. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll just toss that in, because this isn't, as you said, this is not us doing it, it's someone telling us you have to do it.
That's right.
And Councilman Larson wanting to maybe absorb it, but we really can't, because then we get caught with, it's like when our water rate goes up, we have to pass it on. We can't time it later when we think it's more convenient for our customers. So I was just tossing that in.
The question of whether you could subsidize it or not. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Good questions. Anyone else? Okay,
We got one more
Thank-
item for you.
yes, okay.
Yeah.
Proposed, that's item number C. Proposed code amendment, Oak Harbor Municipal Code Section 1705, 0302, plan review fees adopted.
So the reason that I am bringing this to you today is that currently in the municipal code, it calls for the plan review fees to be collected at the time that a building permit or building permit application is turned in. We never do that. It's impossible to do that with the small staff that we have, because many times we have multiple things going at the same time. It does take time to process, and oftentimes people, especially developers, will come in and present several applications at the same time. It's virtually impossible for us to do. So our normal operating procedure is to collect the permit plan review fee and the permit fee at the same time when we issue the permit. So I just wanted to clarify that and make the changes to the code to reflect what we actually do.
Councilor Survedes?
Didn't we make that change or something like that a while? I'm trying to search the memory data banks to make something that was easier on
So-
when a fee was collected for.
What you might be thinking of
Certificate
it
of
was the collection of impact fees. There was a state mandate that required us to put into place a process by which we would collect impact fees prior to occupancy of the structure rather than at the time of the issuance of the building permit. And so we've obviously put those procedures into our code. As an interesting footnote, we've had nobody take advantage of that because it's a fairly intensive process on their side of the table. So what Scott's really talking about is the code envisioned that we were going to be collecting the fee for the plan review at the time that we took in your project. I think, or I suppose that maybe at some point there was a fear that the city would do the work and the person would never come back to get the permit. or abandon the project. And I can tell you in all of my time downstairs, that's very rarely happened, if at all. And so it makes just far more sense for our code to match what our process actually is, which is to charge that fee at the time of the issuance of the permit. And again, as Scott says, that's what we've been doing for years and years. So let's have the code line up with our practice rather than to be at odds with it.
Yeah, and the first question that I actually asked Lisa and Cody is if in their time here they had ever seen that happen, where the plan review fee didn't get collected if a project didn't go forward. And they said they told me that they had never seen that happen here.
So, pretty straightforward. We would anticipate throwing this thing onto the consent agenda for you.
That was going to be a question. I imagine both of these would be on the consent agenda. Is it possible to give us the answer about what the state's going to use the $25 for?
Again, we'll put that into the agenda bill for you.
Okay, great.
So that
Perfect,
you'll see
perfect.
that as you see the packet, that information will be in there for
Okay,
you.
perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any more questions?
Anything else? Okay. Looks like we're good to go. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
So we are going to move on to our next discussion under Public Works. Looks like we have our Public Works Director Kathy Rosen joining us, and our city engineer is back, Joe Stoll. And the item to discuss is RV dump station. Looks like options 4.
So Mayor, council members, I got the feeling when I was putting together the PowerPoint that I was voluntold to do the presentation, which is fine. She goes, when you're talking about this. Anyway.
So this presentation was dumped on you?
Well, it was my second choice, right?
Should have been agenda item number 2.
Right. So, hey, at least we're starting out lighthearted. That's good. So, why is it closed? We just recently put the fence up, and the purpose for closure is it was kind of part of the plan. I mean, the Windjammer Park integration plan that we worked on for some time felt that as we reached out to the public and went to the community meetings, they felt that the RV park in Windjammer was not an efficient use of that space. So as we removed the RV park, the dump station kind of went along with it. As we're doing this, we're realizing that a lot of people have an interest in having an RV dump station in town. So that's kind of what we're here to talk to you about. And as of right now, it is inaccessible. The fences surrounding it, it will be removed. And there's no intention of putting it back in Windjammer Park. So just to kind of throw it out there, I know we do get a number of calls and emails. I know that staff down at the treatment plant has a list of other dump stations that are available that they email out. But there's Deception Pass State Park has 2 that are right next to each other that you can pay $5 fee and use. South Whidbey State Park, even though the RV park, or even though the camping is closed, I believe there's still a dump station there as well. I've learned that there's one at the Swinomish gas station. I didn't know that, and I had a trailer for a while. I did know about the ones at Lions Park, both in Mount Vernon and Burlington. Those are donation run. Camping World has a free one that you can use, which isn't too far out of the way. And a number of the rest stops, not all of them, but a number of them, you'll see that they have the dump stations there that you can use for free as well. And there's also one over at Washington Park in Anacortes. And just kind of graphically, I pulled this off a website. You can see in the upper right corner there. I think it's called sandydumps.com. So I'll give them some kudos for having a map put together. You'll see there's a number of places that are either fee-free or for customers that are staying at these facilities. So there are options. I know for residents of Oak Harbor, it's obviously convenient to have it closer to home, but there are places that they can go. So is there a need? Well, from Public Works, the one need that we really feel there is for it is we have carpet cleaning businesses, and They have to have some place to dispose of the dirty water after cleaning people's carpet. We found that making the RV dump site available to them was a beneficial arrangement. That way they didn't have to try and find some other place to get rid of it. What we've already made arrangements with them, made phone calls to different carpet cleaning companies that we've worked with, and they can come up to Public Works. It doesn't have any sewage in it, it's just dirty water. There's a decant bay, is what we call it. It's where all the wet material that comes out of the Vactor and out of the sweeper goes. So let all the liquid, the water drain out, it goes into the sewer system. They can come up and use that while our gate's open. And then from the public perspective, I know there's probably a lot of reasons, but primarily it's convenience, is why there's a need for one. So we pulled the records together from the last couple of years, 15, 16, and 17. The blue line kind of shows the monthly revenue, hovering, as high as 400 in a given month. The total for each month is the yellow, or for each year, I should say, is the yellow bar. So, around $2,500 a year in revenue from the dump station over the past 3 years. So, clearly we've been looking at other places to put an RV dump station, and we came up with a few ideas just at a convenience. Let's use property that we have. There's the old recycling center. If you drive out Goldie Road, you see the fence, and there's that concrete area that's kind of tiered. A couple dumpsters back there. We use it for our own recycling efforts with our solid waste, but it's paved. You could move a fence around possibly and use that area. Problem is the sewer is out in Goldie Road, and the estimate that we got to connect to that sewer was $30,000 to $40,000 because it's relatively deep. So we thought, well, let's move down the way where there is sewer. So if you move a little bit closer to the sports bar and 16th, there's what used to be the old back gate that goes up to the landfill. We could put something there, but once again, there's other complications. We'd have sewer and water close by because we wouldn't have to go out into Goldie, but you would disturb enough square footage that you'd start triggering stormwater requirements. So it wouldn't be a free solution. We'd have to design it, build it, incorporate all the stormwater requirements. We also thought, just noodling on different places. We are looking to put a sewer up Northeast 21st, or Old Technical Drive, up back by the dog park. We're gonna be putting sewer in. We could do that at the same time. There's some issues with that as well. You got to be able to turn around and actually get back out onto Goldie Road, which is with pulling a trailer. It's already kind of a limited sight distance corner. Looked at the marina. It already has a similar type service, but depending on where you decide to put it there, those the concrete out there was meant for airplanes, and it's 18 inches thick. So we'd have to do some more research to see if that's possible. I found a little spot like right across from the yacht club where the gate is that's relatively flat. It may or may not have thick concrete there, and we'd have to do some coring. Then we have to look at the lift station for the marina and make sure that it's capable of handling the additional usage. And we're open to other ideas. We haven't invested a whole lot of time more than what I've just expressed to you in any of these. And with that, I'd like to kind of open it up. It's something. The cost of doing it is clearly well exceeds the revenue we receive from it. Not everything we do has to match because we do provide services to the public, and that's part of the way things go. So part of the discussion is would you like us to proceed with looking at another location? Is there some place that you'd like us to look? Would you like us to come back with some additional information on a particular site? We're looking for some direction. Or at least some thoughts, because I don't know that you can actually tell us at this meeting what to do.
Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've heard from a number of people since we lost the RV park. There was obviously some dismay there. You said that there was discussion and people said it wasn't the best use of resources and things like that. And as that closed and the RV dump station stayed open, I heard a number of people with boats, with campers, RVs who are local, that they were very appreciative that they still had access to that RV dump station. So I know there's interest in out there. It is a matter of convenience. We don't make a lot of money from it, but it is something that we have provided to the residents of the city in the past, and it's something that gets utilized. And so I'd like to find out which is the most cost-effective means and about what that might look like, so we can make an informed decision as to, for the convenience and for the additional service offset by the minor income that comes in. Would that be something that we would, as a council, consider worthwhile?
Understood.
Thank you. I was intrigued by the marina. Seems like it could be kind of a natural fit. With that, the traffic backing up there, though, you put 2 or 3 trailers in a row. That would be a concern right off the bat. I know it was maybe said in jest in the meeting I was in, and also it came up in a different meeting with the chamber, was the location there near the farmer's market. They'd have ingress, maybe egress, but ingress off of 20 fairly easily if they pulled forward. I don't know if that's a serious discussion that could be had.
That's not, the city doesn't own that property. I think it's actually school district property.
Correct.
So we've only been looking at city-owned
Okay.
properties at this point.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Amber.
I would like to see 3 options, the 3 best options that you can come up with that show the cost and accessibility. And I would also like to see what metering costs would be if we had to put in a low volume pump that would be operated by either a coin box or a card.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I think we still need to provide it somehow. Is there any business or some way to do like a co-sponsor with another company or another business that would also have an interest to have the dump station that maybe we could split? I mean, I'm just trying to think out of the box. I don't know. I'm not into.
That's what, I noticed that the Lions Club had a couple over in Mount Vernon and Burlington. We could reach out to a couple of the organizations and see if there's some interest.
Wouldn't hurt to ask.
Sure.
All I can do is say yes or no. So.
What I'm hearing is that we need to look at it some more.
Yes,
That's what I'm really
please.
hearing.
I have one question. Did we plan any mitigation, knowing that we were going to get rid of it? Did we provide any mitigation funding?
It's an interesting question.
I don't recall
There was-
anything specific.
It was all the mitigation for interruption of use of the RV park was related to the RV park itself. I think the dump station itself was just kind of went along with the package of getting rid of the RV park. So
And the mitigation regarding the RV park is that the sewer fund has been paying the general fund for loss of revenue from the RV park for, I think, 3 years.
So the dollars that you showed, the roughly $2,500, that's direct revenue from somebody was using?
yeah, there was a pay station there, $5 use, which is kind of funny because some of the totals were like 10 cents. I think people just threw pocket change in or something, but
It was an honor system, so
A lot of people probably dumped there and didn't pay.
yes, and some people gave us what they had in their pocket,
Okay.
not $5.
Yeah, okay.
I doubt anybody gave us 6.
Probably right. Anyone? Yes, Councilor Holmberg.
My observation down there several times, I would see carpet companies who are not in the city, who don't have businesses in the city, rather in the county. If we're going to provide this as a county-wide system, perhaps we can approach them about participating with this group. And if we have a key card system, people could get a key card that could be updated online or come into the utility department to update a card. You're gonna have guests who are going to obviously be out of town, but the signage at the station could be that cards are available at City Hall. It's not like it's urgent at that moment. A little bit of pre-planning makes a difference.
We'll look into that.
Okay. Anyone else? Looks like, okay, got a plan. Continue to try to find something.
Very good.
3 options, I guess.
Well, we'll
Do your best.
we'll come back.
Okay.
We'll come back with more info.
Thank
I know
you.
this was just kind of touching the surface of it. I just wanted to make sure we didn't spend a lot of effort on it without knowing there was true interest, and there is.
Yeah, good. Okay. Then we will move to our next item, which is under engineering. Last item is cost change memorandums.
And I'm going to invite a few up here to help. Brett's going to do the bulk of the presentation, and I have Trevor Teese, and I'm going to invite Kay to come up as well, if you would. That way, if you have any questions about the process, they're ready to answer.
You know, Trevor, I moved over here because the glare exactly in there was really bright, so my eyes are dilated, and now when you sit there, your head picks up the
Oh.
glare.
Those in glass houses, my friend.
So you,
I got to mow it a little bit for you too.
for those that are watching, we have Brett Arvidsson, our project engineer, and then could you introduce the other, Trevor?
Yeah, Trevor Teese, he's the project manager with Hoffman Construction. Is that your title exactly, Trevor?
Senior project manager now.
And then I got Kay Adams, partner.
KVA with Construction Management.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon. We've had several questions regarding. Huh? Oh, can I send that way? So.
This way.
Oh, I think we got, okay. They made the rest of the way.
We've had several questions regarding contingent usage on our clean water facility project, and Councilman Zervadis last week had some specific questions to start talking about, and we kind of felt at the time that maybe everybody had the same question. It was better to talk about it as a group because it is an important part of our project, and it's also something that it shows up in your monthly report, so we want to make sure you understand what we're doing and what shows up, and if you do have questions, we can help you with it. Let's see. So talk about our purpose of our presentation today is, one is we want to talk about our GCCM contract organization, because what we're doing is actually fundamental to that, and it ties back to every GMP that we've approved. I'm going to talk about the owner and risk contingency processes. They're 2 different things. I want to make sure we understand the differences. That talk about allowances. We do use allowances quite effectively on this project, but they are a different animal. I want to talk about the fundamental thing that we do here, which we call a cost change memorandum. You hear us talk about CCMs. You do see a CCM summary in your monthly report, and that's a tool that we use to document what we're doing. And also I want to talk about how the monthly invoices reflect these events. So each one of your monthly reports shows the previous month pay estimate. This is a typical pay estimate that we do every month. It's big, a lot of detail to it. It's a lot of work between Ben, Chris, and the team to get it pulled together. It covers a lot of things. So the CCMs are integral to that, and the cover sheet summarizes it quite nicely. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in our GCCM contracts. We've done 13 GMPs. You've seen this before, but I'm going to talk about the different parts of it right now, just to start off with. A big part of the work is what we call direct cost of work, which our allowances are in it. That's the actual putting the pipe together, hammering nails. It's the real construction work that we have. We do various procurements for that. The next part of it is what we call negotiated support services. That again falls in with the cost of work, but that's the cost of running the site. Crane rentals, certain personnel on the site. It's just the cost. It's just the overhead cost to run the site. So like all the fence we put up, that's carried in under the negotiated support services because it supports a lot of GMPs. Risk owner contingency, those are carried as percentages on each one of them, and I'll talk more about them in detail. Specified general conditions, that's our management cost, and that's established by our contract. Our GCCM fee is on top of all that, and taxes, the fee is 4.2%. Our conversation today is mostly going to revolve around direct cost of work and our risk and owner's contingency, how they work together. This is GMP number 12. This is what you typically see. I was going to put 13, the latest one up, but it got a little too small to see on the screen, so I used the one before. You can see up.
I can find it this one.
Put it behind it. Is this? Where's the
red line.
Oops. Okay, sorry. Which one's the button for the light?
Isn't it the green one?
So I used. There we go. So this, you see, this is a typical recap that we attach with every GMP. You can see the direct cost of work here kind of goes down. So this is GMP number 12, which was odor control. These are the various task items you'll see. If we bid a project, you'll see what we call a package number for that, or if it's related to a CCD or something like that. So these are the direct costs of work. Most of that work is actually bid. We do public bidding process. But when we do an allowance, we call it out as an allowance, and it's there, that's a budgetary item. I'll talk more about allowances in a second. Then we go down to negotiated support services. On this GMP, the support services were not included because they were included in another GMP, so we didn't actually increase the support service in this one, but typically you would see something there. Then we go down to it. Once we get down to that, we take our risk contingency and our owner's contingency, two separate items, as percentages of this amount. Then we do the specified general conditions. Again, that was, on this one was in another GMP. And then we do the fees and taxes on top of that. So this is very typical for all 13 of the GMPs we've done, and that's how we look at the project as cost of work, then the add-ons down below it. So I want to talk a little bit about cost of work. As I said, most of our cost of work is we've bid it, has been competitively bid. We do, I think about at least 60% of it is bid, put it out, public bids, advertise it, open bids. They have to comply with all public bidding, like prevailing wage, all our SRF requirements, that sort of thing. So we're kind of doing mini lump sum bids as we move along. The next part is we do self-perform work with cost validation. So we're allowed to negotiate costs. We use the self-perform in various aspects. Most of our self-perform work, except for certain spat, is actually got other, we do it competitively too. So a lot of things we don't put it out for public bid, we get cost quotes for. So we do try to keep the competition pretty maximized in this project. That way we know we're getting the best value for what's going on. Allowances are something I'll talk more about in detail. We do put in allowances, and I'll talk about what they're doing with it. Our NSS is time and material, so that's straight cost with the markup. And I want to make one important thing is we treat each cost of work item as a separate contract. We don't cross back and forth between cost of work items. It's a budget. It's actually not a budget, it's a lump sum cost. The only way we can change those amounts on those things is going through this CCM process or some other way of doing it. So in terms of project control, that's a very important concept. Our contingencies are a little different, but keeping the cost of work separate and managing that cost of work is the basis of how we get this job done efficiently. Allowances now, allowances are, you don't typically see them in public works contracts. We're using them because we're allowed to use them in GCCM contracts. Allowances are work that hasn't been procured yet, either negotiated or bid, but it's something we need to do in the short term. We use it for a variety of reasons, mostly for convenience. We consider allowance just because we haven't got a process as a self-perform work, but again, we do go out and get quotes for stuff and do try to keep it competitive. We've also used allowances where we haven't been able to get competitive bid. If you might remember GMP 11, we had 8 packages we couldn't get bids on. So we ended up using allowances there and then figuring out some way to get them done, which worked out pretty well actually. We were able to go out directly to manufacturers and they won't give us a bid, but they'll give us a quote, and bidding has certain, you have bonds, you gotta have insurance, this type of thing, but they'll give you a quote. We also, when we have allowances, we do adjust an allowance. If they're high or low, we can adjust them through a change order, which we haven't used a lot in this project. A GMP amendment, you might remember in the last GMP, we adjusted our earthwork allowance, or we can do a contingency transfer for a small change one way or another. We'll just deal with it in a contingency account. All 3 ways are allowed by contract, and we can kind of go that way. Now I want to talk a little bit about our contingencies. We have, in our GCCM contract, we have both risk and owner's contingency. They are 2 very separate things, and when we talk about contingencies, the traditional way of talking about contingency is what we call owner's contingency. Risk contingency is something completely different. All our contingencies go into while we keep our cost of work separate, our contingencies go into a contingency pot, so owner's contingency pot, and a risk contingency pot. So they can transfer, and that's what way it's set up per contract. One thing we need to say is contractually, if we take savings and the cost of work, contractually we transfer that down to contingency. So there is a flow process going on that seems a bit bizarre at times, but it's actually quite logical. And we use that quite effectively.
So just one more time, if you would say that. So you said you keep the cost of work completely separate.
Right.
If there is a savings, that's the natural bucket it's going to flow to as contingency.
It goes back to contingency by our contract.
And then if there's an overage, or is there never an overage because we have
Say it can go both ways. So say we have something that's eligible for contingency, and I'll talk a little bit about what those are. Okay. It can go the other direction. So we can apply contingency to cost of work. Again, how that works is through the CCM process, and that's what we're trying to get through because it's free for construction. This is a bit different. Risk contingency is a type of contingency only used in GCCM. You would not see this in a normal bid project or that. It is required by RCW. Remember that our whole GCCM process is defined by statute. So this is one aspect that's required in there. We use risk contingency for construction coordination issues, and that's inherent to how we handle these projects. We're not doing a lump sum project where one contractor's in charge. We're actually doing multiple, like I say, we're doing a lot of contracts, and how we get a lot closer to the coordination of that. So this is more of a construction coordination issues. Say, for example, we package something, there's a scope gap in them. Hoffman is ultimately responsible for that, but they are allowed to have use this contingency for that. Project acceleration, overtime. Sometimes there's times when we want to accelerate or pay for overtime. I'll talk about an example of that in a second. Project buyouts, we can use these risk contingency if we have something in there that we had an allowance for, we can buy it. And so doing final buyouts is an allowable use of risk contingency. Coordination issues between subs, sometimes you'll have the electrical thought they were doing something or the mechanical thought they were doing something and we have to, I call it, one of my old mentors called it gaposis, and we have these little gaps in the system that we have to cover. Some issues like we buy equipment in advance, our Harsliff dryer, our membranes. This equipment comes and we don't see the shop drawings for a year later. So we see the shop drawings, there may be a coordination issue or something like that we have to pick up later. So that's one of the things we use quite commonly use this for. I wanted to say that this type of contingency is normal on traditional design. We just never see it. So a contractor doing a normal lump sum bid will build this into their project, but the owner, it never shows up on our schedule of values. So in the industry, it's a very common practice, but in terms of what we see as owners, it never does. So these type of coordinating issues are inherent in all types, and wastewater projects are more so. But it's something that contractors use and use a lot, but it's like the normal GCCM process. We're a lot closer to some of these aspects that you would not normally be that close to. So again, it's something inherent to this type of process, but it's actually used in the industry, but it's just something you don't normally see. And I think another issue is, by contractually, the contractor has a reasonable expectation to use the risk contingency at their discretion. The contract language is we have to evaluate it and we cannot reasonably deny it. So what's reasonable is we've had many discussions on, but you know, it is a tool for them to use. We've been very effective with it. I want to say that I can't say that they've jumped at it, but there's times we need to use it. There's been times that I've argued it and we haven't used it. So again, it's a different thing than your traditional owner's contingency, and we need to be sure that we understand the two concepts. Now, owner's contingency is something, you know, it's more for changes in project scope, design clarifications. Sometimes we'll come back and say, well, we need to fix this or fix that. There's a certain amount of that on every project. Design uncertainties. We deal with a lot of uncertainties where ground conditions, archaeology. For example, we were digging out in the park, we found the remains of the old go-kart track out there, and somebody was changing oil out there and left big piles of that, and we had to remediate that. It was, you know, something that was unexpected, and that's the normal use of contingency. Incomplete design elements. You know, we're building a lot of things, starting to build things before we have the final design. For example, in GMP number 7, which is our deep foundation work, we started that in June of 2016. We started designing the odor control system in just a couple months before that. So as we got through the design, we realized that we had to add some extra steel to the deep foundation. You know, it was just we had to add some extra rebar, and it wasn't a design mission or anything like that. It was just something we had to do because we had not decided on the odor control location yet. It was something we incorporated because we were doing T&M, so we ended up buying it, you know, our unit price per ton, so it wasn't a big change. But it was something that would be eligible for owner's contingency. Actually, we absorbed it into the T&M contract. But again, there's things that we were designing that we had to come back and make some adjustments later, and it was to our advantage. We do, you know, and sometimes we can, you know, if we want to buy an extra camera or do something, you know, we can use owner's contingency for that. We haven't used a lot of that, but if there's something we want to buy, we can do that. Owner's contingency, we use a documentation process for that. We call it a request for information, RFI. So sometimes in these CCMs or in these documents, you'll see us talk about RFIs. So if something comes through that's a change, or and a lot of RFIs are just, you know, we're coordinating issues, but if there's a change, we'll either document it through a RFI or design clarification. And that's the process we use for that. Right now, we're like 35 DCs, and I think we're over 900 RFIs now. Almost 1,000. So, and like I said, not all 1,000 will result in costs, but it's a process we use to make sure the coordination and communication is quite clear. So I'm going to come back to this later, but this is a sign bill. Every month we do a bill from Hoffman. This is it here. That's the cover page for that bill, and this is where we start to see this process come to work. And I'll bring you back to this later, but you can see on the left side we have the cost of work. Those are actually broken down into more specific detail. This is the summary sheet. You can see this is from last month. We haven't put GMP 13 yet into it because we haven't started billing on it yet. But you can see the cost of work. You can see negotiated support services, specified general conditions right here. And you see our risk. And so we carry, I'm not here, So this is the original GMP amount that you saw in that recap. So as we make an adjustment, we adjust it over here. So as we put money up into cost of work, we take it out down below here. So this, while this total stays the same, there starts to be flow back and forth. So like under GMP number 2, we finished out with $199,000 under budget. So that transferred down. The GMP number 4 was 235 over. So
Brett, is
Yeah.
any of that in this?
yes. Excuse me. Yeah. All these sheets that I'm referring to are actually in your packet too. So if you want to read it better, that's.
So that sheet right there is in the packet?
It's before the long sheet. It's right
Yeah.
That one bit before the log sheet.
Yeah. And again, this bill is included in your monthly report, so you'll see this every month as you come through. And also in your monthly report, you'll see a summary of the CCMs, and I'll go back into this in more detail. I just wanted to look at this because this is how we look at the project and how it flows. Now, we use what is called a cost change memorandum. You hear us use CCM a lot, and like I say, we do a summary of every CCM in your monthly report. And for us, it's a financial mechanism that accounts for transfers between cost of work and contingency accounts. So as we put money in or out, we document that with the CCM, and I'll show you some examples of one in a second. We also use it for allowance draws. Allowances are kind of special, so we like to follow those with the CCM. That way, as we do an allowance draw, we have the documentation to show why we're doing it and how we're drawing from it. We've used it occasionally to correct billing errors. It's pretty rarely. We had 3 self-performed concrete jobs going on at the same time, and some of the accounting got blurred. So as we straightened some of it out between the 3 cost of work accounts, we used a CCM to do that. We had some charges to one account that should have gone to another. Again, normal accounting, but seems pretty diligent about making sure the costs are going to the right place. And that's just because we are transitioning between two contracts, so people were using the same charge number when they should have transitioned out. Like I said before, funds do transfer in both directions, and it's kind of goes back and forth quite often. So this is an example of a CCM. This is cost change memo. This is one we used for just recently for GMP number 7. That was self-performed concrete. That was a $5.4 million contract. Finished one, we took a change initially for that for 174 because we did some value engineering on it. Then as we finished the project, went through the time and materials, we finished it at $248,000 less than what our contract amount was. So we put that credit back into that. So you'll see here it says, oops. That's the right one. Yeah. You'll see it says deduct from HSY contract GMP number 7, 248. And this is add to owner's contingency 248. So that's where that flow happens. So this is the basic mechanism that shows up in your billing report. This is one, like I say, that's came in under budget, so we took the credit. This is another type of CCM. This is a little one. This is for Schneider Roofing, and you might remember last spring it was a little wet, and we were putting roofs up, and the roofers were having a hard, they can't do it out in the rain. They have to have dry days, so we had a good Saturday where the weather looked pretty good, and Mr. Shirley says, have fun on your Saturday. And so this is a risk contingency item. We basically, they got paid time and a half to go out there and work on the Saturday. We picked up the half. But again, that was a project acceleration, so that came at us. So we gave Schneider, who was a subcontractor for the roof, $2,200, and that came out of our risk contingency account. Again, that's a very typical way of doing it.
And you can see all the support documentation that follows it to document it.
I didn't put this all up in the wall, but each one of these CCMs has got ton of paperwork behind them. And this is more of an owner's contingency item. Yeah. Yes.
So, a lot of rain, it puts the project behind when you have a good day, and Mr. Hoffman says, yeah, let's get this done. So it appears that some ways we are spending more money, but then again, if we get too far behind, then we're gonna be spending a lot more money because the dominoes
Yeah.
kind of stop and whatever, so,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a strategic application
Right.
of the contingency for schedule purposes, but certainly anything weather-related, and particularly roofing, where we would face the exposure of the interior finishes being exposed to water damage. We want to take advantage of every good day we get. Another good example of strategic application over time is like if we make a pour on a Friday, we're typically able to strip those forms on a Monday. If we make a pour on a Monday, we wouldn't be able to strip until Wednesday. So in accelerating the work to be able to pour on a Friday, we take advantage of the weekend cure. So it's one of these things that saves you incremental days in the schedule to be able to selectively apply that overtime expense. But again, it's just the premium portion, it's not dollar for dollar, it's just that
Right.
premium cost.
Thank you, I just wanted to be sure I had the sequence going, thank you.
Let's see. Here's a third example. Like, is that the right one? I can use my eyes or.
This is.
This one is example, as we got through designing down in the tunnel, we found that some of our membrane piping, it was a coordination issue, was small. We wanted to upsize it. So this is for chemical piping. We use caustic and sodium hypochlorite in this system, and we had to upsize some chemical piping to up to a 1.5 inch. That was UMC cost, which is our mechanical subcontractor, and that was owner contingency. It was a design clarification issue for us. And so again, we took the charge, went to UMC, and it came out of owner contingency. So these are the type of things we have. I just wanted to give you some examples of what we do here. If somebody wants to dwell in detail, these blue sheets here is a list of all the CCMs that we've done in the project, quite a few of them, and if somebody wants to talk about specific items, they can look at that. Again, we do, in the monthly reporting more, you will see all the CCMs listed, and you'll see it going to allowance, and we do use your shorthand, so if that's become confusing, we'll try to clear that up. We won't go into detail on a CCM, but if somebody has a question, we certainly can get them the information.
Yes, Brett?
Ask a question while you're close by on this, on that last sheet, that is the summary.
Yeah.
I'll point out just for public and for the benefit of everybody here, the wastewater treatment plant, the physical plant, not the periphery stuff, is $110,528,000, not $148 million, okay?
Yeah.
There's a lot of periphery stuff that's been added on to this for a variety of reasons, and we don't have to go into that. My question on this report, if you look under the adjustments, under the owner contingency, risk contingency, in the same way GCC, the general contractor, there's a sum of $3 million that was used in deleted from the contingencies or adjusted and moved someplace else, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What justified those? How do we get a report that says we had to move this and this is why?
That's what we're trying to do with the monthly reporting, giving you a summary of the CCMs. If you want to see the CCMs in detail, we can provide those for you. But we will provide a summary of what happened that month in terms of CCMs.
Yeah, let me explain the
Yeah.
gap. It's the scope gap
Yeah.
that I'm more concerned about, because we don't get to see that. You
Yeah.
know, we work for the public, we don't work for Hoffman, and we work with the staff. But the GCCM process was designed to be able to have the contractor, the engineer, the owner all work together to avoid scope gap. Those are, in the private side, also scope gaps equal change orders. We just don't call them change orders. We dip into the risk contingencies, but when we do GCCM, where are we seeing the benefit of the value engineering that keeps the cost down? That's part of the story we're not getting, and obviously we're not telling.
And I think that is, we've kind of talked about that as a team where we can actually start showing that, because there's a lot of things that happen, you know, like, you know, I think Trevor said we're making the sausage and you don't see the sausage making going on. And so how do we, you know, some things happen, some things we do see, you can go through one of these and say, yeah, we took a change in that, or what we do to push back on a cost change. And that, I think, is a good story that we need to tell better. And we get into the weeds a lot. I think that's part of it is, you know, we live this day to day. We use a jargon here that is there, and we make decisions, you know, it's based on, we live in a contractual world where our relationship is driven by our contracts. And so how we do that, I think, is an excellent place to come back. Because I think we have a good story here, and we're all proud of this performance.
Specifically, I would say,
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah.
We don't know the depth part of it like
Yeah.
you guys do. But the message is definitely not getting out there,
Yeah.
because I was down there last Saturday
Yeah.
for that monument, the
Yeah.
Founders Monument, and I heard some sour comments from people who I know. I was walking past it again today, and I heard a nasty sour comment, and I'm going, why? Why is this happening when it is really a good story? But the story is always, and it was in the paper today, the wastewater treatment plant is $148 million. Well, the park and all the periphery stuff is $148 million. The cost of money, the cost of engineering is thrown in there. But the rate doesn't get talked about. And it doesn't get talked about, for example, like the dryer system. We could have gone with a cheaper dryer system, tell me how much cheaper, but what's the cost for hauling out stabilized sludge? There's the other part of the story too. We don't tell that story.
so there's two things. One, there's one that's coming out of design. I think the dryers is a good story. But also, as we develop cost savings for the GMPs are already established, those will come back as negative CCMs. It will be a credit CCM that's throwing money back toward a contingency. So we know we've got a few on the table right now for Windjammer Park, for instance, reducing the topsoil, take another look at these light poles. As we find those savings opportunities, they're going to come off the table as a credit CCM that will go back to owner contingency. So I think capturing those little tidbits is part of that story that you want to be able to tell.
And the public doesn't follow this.
Exactly.
This is way
I wouldn't-
too complicated, it takes too much time. But there is a very good story out there.
Yeah.
Help us
I
tell
think
that
there's a few
story.
anecdotes we could probably put in every month's report
Yeah.
that just says, you know, these were savings discovered and attained this period.
Thank you, Mayor. Trevor, we're at a disadvantage because our local paper wants to sensationalize everything. And in my personal opinion, make us look bad. But there are so many good stories through other projects you've done. It's probably has happened. Is there a better way to try to market it or communicate it? I mean, it's a shame. I went the other night and I'm talking to a group of people and they looked at me and I said, I never thought I'd be excited about sewage plants. And I started talking about some of this remarkable stuff. And they started to see the light bulb come on, like UV light disinfecting instead of bleaches and stuff. And people look like, what are you talking about? And then they kind of got excited. But it's I've heard some of the stories, but not quite enough. But you've probably had other projects, and I guess that's one of the biggest gaps I see is we're not always hearing because you're in the jargon and we're not, but we're your choir, so help use us. But there's got to be other projects on how did it work to get it out, the story, because we're not going to get help from the paper. But there could be other ways.
You have a firm engaged in this project that's probably one of the finest messaging firms that and it is about messaging, getting the right message, putting it in the light that people can understand and grasp what those benefits are. I think we just need to make sure we're pumping the right information to.
Yeah, I think that's why I
in
brought this
variations.
terribly detailed discussion in for you, because that's the start. Is I think there's some feeling that we're running amok or there's no responsibility, there's no cost control, and the fact of the matter is we're running a very complex project with very firm financial controls. We've maximized the competition. Every step we've taken is to make sure the public gets the best price. I think anybody on this team feels that way. And also, I think the story has to be that, you know, there's a lot of us been here for 3 years. A lot of people moved into this town to do this. I'm staying, but we have a great group of people that have worked pretty hard. And I think we need to, I would like to start, we need to make that message because we have something to be proud of as a city. Yeah, it's been a big project. We had to swallow the elephant, and we're coming out with a good result. I wish it had been 130 or something less, but I can honestly say that everybody in this team worked hard to keep that cost under control. And there's things you don't see. I want to compliment Hoffman. You know, there's a lot of times we have a sub come to us saying, you know, Brian was coming at us. Some of the subs are starting to grumble about some extras, and they start talking about money. They don't get out of first base. I don't see it because it never gets past Brian or Ben. So we have a good group of people. Our frustration is we're proud of our work, and we need to get that message out because things we've done here, Kay gets around, you know, we're talking about owner's contingency. We're running at 1.39, and in this business, that is a very, very good.
Extremely low, extremely low.
Well, I think, you know, I just ran some numbers too, and Rick, you'd appreciate this. You know about percentages in construction, but our build cost to date on the project is just shy of 89 million. And our total contingencies between owner contingency and the risk contingency, expenditures of that 89 million is about 4%. So for a project of this complexity, with the kind of side issues we've had, and you know the archaeological issues and everything else, to be running at 4%, I'm pretty proud. So.
And it's on schedule.
And so we wanted, and that's why I wanted to, there's been some people walking around and yeah, there's disgruntled. I think one, we have to deal with the facts, and the facts are in black and white, and I welcome anybody that wants to come down and talk to about it. That's fine. You know, nobody's ever come to a Monday session. I'll be glad to sit down with the process and go through with them. But also too, I think we do need to take pride in what we're doing. Oak Harbor is, you know, what we're doing here is, I think, the city of Seattle, state of Washington. We're doing some really good work here, and as Oak Harbor, we should take some pride in that. And I do think we need to blow our horn, but we need your help with that. Again, I'm in the trenches, making sure the numbers get in, the concrete gets poured, and we meet schedule, and the switches turn on. But I want to. Part of the conversation where Joel, I wanted to talk about what we're doing here because it is, we've tried to make it as transparent as possible. It's something that even in the engineering business or in the construction business, what we're doing is out there on the tough field. But you know, I'm proud of every day of what I do walking in. I do think we need to make sure that people understand they're getting a good job, and I'm trying to reflect that in my own attitudes. But I would hope as we move forward that people understand what's going to happen. And I think there are some people out there, for some people, every so often you hear somebody unhappy, but I talk to people that are, yeah, what's going on? Yeah, what's going on at the plant? When are you going to be done? You're starting up this summer, that's great, and we just have to take the good with the bad, but I think we have something to be proud of, and I think we should be talking about it.
I think as a council member, you hear from your constituents. You hear it before we hear it. And maybe part of that process is a little bit of an education process with your constituents also. Having been a public works director 22 years of my life in a previous life, I know when I worked with my council on several really tough projects that got a lot of scrutiny from the public, it helped a lot that the council members were behind it. They knew that it was there, and they could help with some of that education process. And that means a lot, to staff also, to know that we're not just out here goofing around trying to do stuff like, and you know that. I know you know that already. But it's something that it's a tough story to tell without having hearing your constituents directly like you guys hear it. And so I guess I would challenge you to take the step to, if you hear something, invite them. Brett's more than happy to talk to them. I'm more than happy to talk to them. Bring them in. We'll help educate them if it takes that.
If I may, Brett, in one of our Thursday morning meetings, in one of the reports, there was a description of what the use of the owner's contingency is, and the language in there was for A&E errors and omissions, and I had a discussion with you about that, and I think that you didn't backpedal, you corrected the language, and I see in following reports that language is not there. We are not providing contingency money for errors and omissions for the consultants, okay? And I do believe that. At the same time, I want to ask you this question. Have we had any errors or omissions by the A&E team that resulted in going back and having to do some redesign for either bidding purposes that we got charged for or for construction performance that we got charged for? Because those relate to not only A&E costs, but if they're extra costs for construction, it may affect the contingency for Hoffman.
I have one item that I have a complaint with Corolla on, and we've been addressing it.
What does that mean, we've been addressing it?
Well, we fixed the problem, and there was some cost involved. Corolla fixed their mistake on their side for free, but there was a cost to it. Is it millions of dollars? No. Is it $100,000? Yes.
And who paid for that?
We paid for it out of the contingency account. Now, I asked the question, do I go back and ask Corolla for that money? You get into how much was that change worth? What is their liability on it? I'd rather deal with Corolla and say, you guys owe us something for this, and so next time that they want to start thinking about asking for extra money, I'm saying, you guys need to belly up to that one a little bit. So again, none of us are perfect. I do think the quality of work we're getting on this project is very good. But is Corolla messing up? No, I think the quality of work we are seeing it, because like I say, 1.39 is a reflection of the design documents, and so we have to, when we do the final reconciliation, that's one issue, but do I have, I've been involved with projects where we're changing stuff every day. These design clarifications are generally important to the project. I did design clarification, we issued one last week because we did Windjammer Park. We put the plans out for bid in January. We did the permit submittal. I got the permit comments a week or a half ago, 2 weeks ago. We just want to make sure that the permit comments are reflected in the bid comments. Nothing major there, but those are things that we do.
On not to spend much time on this, but on the engineering side, on the Corolla side of it, within their design, if they left something out that was not included in the GMP, in other words, I'll use an example of $100,000. If it was something that there had to be an adjustment of $100,000, the criteria is if in construction it wasn't included in the price, then the value wasn't there for the owner to pay, right? If, in other words, if they didn't bid, I'm just going to use an example, if they didn't bid on, 100 yards of concrete because it got left out, it didn't get included in the bottom line in the price. If they had to go back and redesign, the redesign work is on their shoulders.
Yes, absolutely.
The construction, the cost of concrete was never included in the cost, so the owner didn't pay for it until the work was done. Then the owner received value.
Yeah.
That makes sense to you.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So in this scenario, for Corolla, if something was $100,000 and we paid for it, did we receive value, or did we have to tear something out and redo it and pay for that
And I
value
think,
again?
And that is a good example, is we received value for the change. I feel we paid more for the change than the value we got, and that's where I feel the difference there, and that's where I have my discussion with them. So we paid for something, we had to pay more for it in the change, and that difference between what we paid for and the change is my heartburn on that one issue. And I have one issue, and frankly, it's, and on a project of this size, one issue of that type is pretty good.
Specifically, Mr. Ulmer, are you asking about rework?
Yeah.
You're asking if
Did-
you had to
did the
pay
error-
to do it twice.
That's right.
Okay. I can't think of any examples where we've had to do rework or doing something twice as a result of, the phase design process where we basically have said, okay, there is a change. We have to include this change. We haven't got it funded. We're gonna have to deal with either risk contingency or owner contingency, however it falls based on its characteristic, and we implement it. But I can't think of rework in the history of the project.
Well, that answers my question. And Brett, you say you can't think of any rework either, right?
I can think of rework. There's one issue that we had to make a fix on. We didn't do rework. We caught it before it got to there.
Okay, that's not rework.
Yeah, and we caught it before it got to there, and I had to upsize some pipes and change some things around that would have cost less if we'd done it right the first time. But again, like I say, the quality in this work is very high.
No jackhammers, no cutting tools.
No jackhammers, no, and I think that's part of the process here, is we have a very high effect, and we're ahead of the schedule. Brian here is one of the best planners I've ever run across. We deal with things, if something comes up, we know about it before anything bad happens, and but also, we have Corolla, they're not here today to defend themselves, but they've been very much part of that process too. And yeah, I have one issue I'm grumbling about. Is it a major issue? No. And is it a huge cost overrun? Not at all. But I looked at him at the time and said, this is bad, because it's also when I personally pointed out to him and didn't get caught in the final review. So that one I do carry. But I think we do have a good team. It's been, we call it the three-legged stool. It takes a good owner, good contractor, a good engineer. And I think the fact that we're all sitting here today talking to you like we're talking to you is, after 3 years, is...
And we've got a fourth leg to us.
Yeah.
Well, I'm part of this leg.
And
So is this a complete list?
it's a complete list as of last Friday. I haven't signed all of them, but that reflects.
So just to make sure it's clear, you see the one, when you look at one of these CCMs, you see that it's signed by Brett and it's signed by Dan Williams, who's with KVA. They take the ones for the month when I get the monthly bill. I go through them and sign off on them as well. And basically what I'm trying to say is there's multiple sets of eyes, and it's not just city eyes that are on it. We have our KBA over here helping us take a look at it as well. And I know that Chris Bailey does a great job of summarizing the numbers at the back of all this, but keep in mind that not every one of these CCMs is, it may be moving just across from one GMP to another. It may not even be affecting contingencies.
So when you get these multiple signatures and it comes to your, excuse me.
That's all right.
Comes to your desk and you sign off on those, do you spend a substantial amount of time on those and push back on questions that you may have?
You know, when they come in, they're about half the size of that stack, and I'll thumb through them to see what they're about, and I'll pick a couple to interrogate deeper. I have faith that Brett has done his job, that Dan Williams has done his job, and that Ben and the team that I'm working with, I have trust in them. Doesn't mean that I take everything at face value. I do look at them, but I don't spend 8 hours going through the entire stack.
I believe that, but you have a summary with that stack too.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So there are triggers within the summary that probably bring things to your attention.
Sure,
I would
yeah,
imagine.
I'm trying to track it, you know, and I see something that I don't recall or that's an odd dollar amount. I flip back to one of these and read up on what it's about. If I have further questions, I'll ask.
And as much as you reserve the right to check through those things too, this council member, and I'm sure the other council members feel the same way, will always reserve the right to ask why, what, when, where, how much. That will always be there. And that's not because we don't trust you guys and we think we have a good team. At least I feel we do. But I will always have a mindset of being curious. And I will ask questions.
No, and I think that's why we wanted to give this presentation today, because we wanted to up people's confidence level. I hope I did. Also, we wanted you to understand what we're doing, so if you have a question and we're starting to provide these tools and you see something in the monthly report that, you know, what's going on here, we can get that information to you. And I think, like I said, we're trying to get the CCMs summarized in the monthly report. We're not going to give you 20 pages on that, but if you come and say, you know, what was CCM 792 or whatever it is, we can get you that information like that and have the explanation. And we do spend a lot of time with it. You know, Joe does review all these things. We do a weekly meeting, Dan, Chris, and I, and Ben, to go over this. And I've sent a few back to the showers, and we have gone through, and it passes the Chris Bailey and the Dan Williams mathematics, and you know it's part of the process. But you know, I feel very good about what we're doing, and I think the numbers we're seeing in terms of the ratios is very good. But I do want to start this off as try to build confidence. I think, like I say, you're our greatest advocates out in the community, and I'm hoping we're providing the stuff that you need to talk to people and say, yeah, this is a great project, and do it. You know, it is, you know, people say, yeah, we're running amok, or I think I want to say is, yeah, we are running a very tight financial system that stands up. It may not stand up to the Whidbey Island, you know, complain about it in the morning, but if somebody wants to come in and look at what we're doing and understand what we're doing in a professional sense, that's our goal. But also the same token, I feel we owe the community some confidence, and we owe them a good project. And we've all been, it's been 3 years for me. It's been 7 or 8 for Joe. And you know, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And when we approved GMP 13 about a month ago, I guess it's now, I sent a note out to the team, says, no, let's finish it, and let's bring it home, and let's be proud of what we've done.
Mayor Protem?
Thank you. I know as a council member, and I've tried to drag neighbors or husbands or whatever to look at it, I feel a very big source of pride to know that when we said we wanted it 50+ years, that you can look at the brick, you can look at the wood, you can look at the piping, you can look at, and it was neat because this is exactly what we asked for it to be done on it. But I'm hoping that the rest of the city staff, I mean, the marina worker on the docks, that they will be given or a strong choice to go tour it sometime, because we're all part of the team and we all need to be able to talk the talk and to see what's going on. And if you only have parts of it, then they go, oh, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I heard two boys with a unlaced their shoes and the basketball going, why are they building an art museum? It's just to process poop. And I wanted to jump, and my husband went, you will not give them a lecture. But I meant, we're all in on this, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know if we make a wellness walk, everybody get your tennis shoes on and you're gonna walk through, but we're all part of it, and we all need to be educated with this project and to be proud. And they need to know why they want to be proud. So somehow between now and the end, and not just wait for the end, I would hope we could do that some way, Mayor, to make sure we're all going. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. I asked for this in the bi-weekly construction meeting, I guess we call it. As I'm sitting here listening to this, and I've heard some of the comments, pick your platform, whether it's social media, Starbucks, or the grocery store. The public, what I've started asking them was, when was the last time you attended a council meeting, or a workshop, or a design charrette? And then I'll politely explain where we're at and what the process is. In case anyone's watching this and they didn't notice, we're cutting down some trees in the park right now. I've already heard that the trees are crying and the Lorax is coming to Oak Harbor, and it's all part of progress. It's part of change, a change that's been in the works for, how long did we have Windjammer Park improvement charrettes? 2 years? Year and a half?
I don't remember the exact date, but it's been a really long time.
I got accosted the other day, and that's probably the right word for it. Why didn't they notify us they were closing the park? Well, you've done a great job.
4 years worth.
6,000 flyers, multiple mailings, and I'm beyond, I'm not apologetic at all. I'm to the point of explaining the process, encouraging them to participate if they're upset with something, or taking that feedback, because sometimes it is valid, or there's just something that needs answered. I know there's probably 1,000 went right stories that we don't hear. Boots on the ground folks over there that are, it reminds me of a product review. If I'm ever buying a product and I review it on Amazon or whatever, if it's got 60+%, it's probably a pretty decent product, because most of us know if it works, you go home and hey, my blender works, my vacuum cleaner's great. You don't really tell people that, but if your vacuum cleaner doesn't work, or you think there's something wrong with it, you're going to tell everybody. So maybe there is somewhere where we put together a what went right's workshop, and there's lots of, I know you guys could say lots of things where, hey, we figured this out ahead of time, and that saved us 3 days on the schedule, or a month, or, and of course we know when it goes over, because you do bring most of those to us to approve if there's a cost change that goes the other way. But sitting here watching this process, I don't think you've ever brought us a CCM that you've referenced them where we saved 40,000 here, 200 there, but you've never, I don't think you normally bring those to us.
To us, it's, it's business as usual, and like I say, we're proud of our performance, and like I say, I'm coming, I showed you 248. I'd already gotten 174 off of that before I even started it, and that was because of Mr. Shirley here looking at something, and Kroll jumped in. So we do a lot of that, and sometimes we do things that result in no extra costs that doesn't show up in paperwork. I was dealing with a control issue the other day, and I had a younger electrical engineer that decided that every circuit on our Harsloff dryer needed to be duplicated and be redundant. And I go, why, and that was at $1,000 a circuit. 65 of those would have added up some money, but it took, I just said no, we don't need it. We're doing a PLC. It's matter of fact, it's probably going to be a problem. We'll jumper them all in 5 years anyway, and yeah, that's the way it turned. So there's a lot of that going on. That we have a good mix of team in terms of gray hairs or no hairs, and we also have
And brown hair.
we also have a good younger team that are so I really like the mix of people we have, and we have the maturity to do something. But we also have the youthfulness and enthusiasm. Ben's going to be out doing projects like this, and he'll probably be telling Oak Harbor stories forever. My God, I survived.
Well, just what a success it is.
What I'd like to commit from our team is that I think there is a story that's not being told. I hear that loud and clear. And I think what we can do by each GMP is put together a list of the successes, the cost avoidances that came out of that, and the value engineering items that were implemented in each one of those GMP, so you can see what you don't see, right? And what you haven't heard. Because there's, every one of them has a half dozen or more of those. So
I think you're really onto something. I still have people that are crabby because we took the big crane away, and it's, but life goes on, and this project is on time or ahead of schedule. There are so many good things about the project, and I think some of the things that we're not telling, like the what we're going to be doing in the way of treatment to the water. I mean, simple. It's going to be probably some of the best treated water anywhere, state of the art, and those are the kind of things that generally will shut somebody down when they're crabbing about it, because at the end of the day, we're better than schedule. We're going to have a state of the art, hopefully 50-year. I'll be long gone, so hopefully 40 to 50-year asset, and one of the best in the state. So
speak to that crane, Mayor.
Yeah.
Somebody asked that question again. That runs about $70,000 a month. I think. And I was very, very proud of our team that the day we put it up, we were going to take it down on X date, and this year, right?
In 2014.
In 2014, we established that date. We hit that month on the nose, and I said, that rarely happens.
Wow.
So I mean, it's 70 grand a month.
Yeah.
I was very happy.
Yeah, and I do tell them the cost too. But a couple of the percentages that you mentioned that you're proud of, people get really bored quickly when you give them very many numbers. But a couple of those kind of things would be helpful too.
Yeah.
You're proud of the figures that you've talked about. Those help us tell the story, and I think you'll find that we want to do this. We want to get this done and be really proud of it. So that's where I'm headed to. Yes, Councilor Humber.
On that note, even though it's state of the art, it's also probably more important, it's forward thinking, because the future is this type of treatment. And for those communities who are not treating to this level of quality, guess what? They're going to be joining the crowd.
Yeah.
And we're on the leading edge of this, and I absolutely believe that. Not because I want to believe it, but it's just a fact. When you're dealing with regulations through the state for treatment and discharging sewage or any water, stormwater, anything into Puget Sound, it's a fragile resource right now, and it's going to be treated that way by DOE, and we're out in front of this one. And the other part of that is the footprint of this plant allows us to expand. And even though the plant wasn't designed for capacity for our particular needs plus the Navy, we may have the Navy early, and I think it's probably going to be earlier than later, and we may be in a better negotiating position because we're there, we have low utility rates, we have low cost of funds for doing this, fixed cost of funds, and we don't have to give space away in that treatment plant to a federal agency just because we like them. And we like them, but maybe we don't like them that much.
Anyone else?
I was going to give you another flash of this final table, but I think I'll pass on that. But what happens is when we do these CCMs, that comes back in these adjustment categories. So that's how it kind of works. So we go through the CCM process. It shows up in a bill, we process it, and then it comes in or out of the account, and it goes to the cost of work. Again, we're operating under a GMP, so our contingencies are operating under a guaranteed maximum price. Change orders.
Brett, did you print your PowerPoint?
Huh?
Did you print out your PowerPoint?
It's available. Yeah, I print out a copy for myself. Just
Yeah,
to,
okay.
But yeah, we can make print copies for people.
Anyone else?
It'll be on our project website, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like a copy.
So.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. We are, that is the last item that we had for discussion, but it's now time if council has anything to discuss. Additional? If not, we will adjourn. Okay, we'll adjourn. Thank you.